मैं फौजी से यहाँ खाना पीना बिना खाए के भूखे है एक बात के कोनी कोनी समझक लागी तोके हैं चल चल तोके बताबो कांदू तक खुला है ना भरिया है तोर हैं एक बात के घनी घनी पूजाव लगे तोके
And understand the fact that the reaffirming of the UN Declaration on Elimination of Violence Against Women, which was adopted in 1993 at the Beijing conference, and thereafter there have been several conversations on the subject matter. Well, we also can tell that there have been some successes and there have been some real challenges in achieving results. So having said that, I want us to also recognize, and I want the audience and our listenership to also know that this year's celebrations mark the 29th anniversary of this advocacy. And so 29 years ago, a lot of things have changed. But like I said, there's few things that we need to pay attention to. So the first question that we want to discuss, and in no particular order, I mean, once the question is asked, any of you who feel comfortable can jump into it. And let's keep it short so that we can have others to get involved. So the international community has recognized that violence circumstances or circumscribes women's lives, limiting their options and preventing them from the enjoyment of broad range of human rights. In the last 10 years, women have become increasingly vulnerable to violence. Conflict and post-conflict situations have fomented various forms of violence against women, from the use of rape as a weapon of war to domestic violence in the aftermath of war. The spread of HIV/AIDS is fueled in some measures by sexual violence, while HIV-positive women and girls are targets of violence. The inequalities exacerbated by globalization have increased. I will ask that if you are not speaking, please try to mute your background so you don't disturb the rest of the meeting. The inequalities exacerbated the globalization have increased women's vulnerability to violence, particularly in the context of economic migration and trafficking in persons. So the question then is, How have these developments impacted work towards the prevention and elimination of violence against women and children? I know this is a very detailed, broad question, but it's open anyone who has a thought on how have these developments, which I alluded previously, impacted the work towards the prevention and elimination of violence against women.
Yeah, I think that within the 29 years, a lot of achievements have been made. We've made a lot of strides in the area of preventing violence against women, kind of reducing it. We've made a lot of strides about giving women access to some platforms that women hitherto 29 years earlier were not allowed to have access to. A simple example is that prior to the Beijing conference 29 years ago, women couldn't own property without owning that in a man's name. And today, women can own property. So some significant improvements have been made. The unfortunate side of it is that as we groom more women to take on their power and own it and venture into areas that they were hitherto prevented from, we haven't really groomed men to embrace the presence of women that they had been groomed to see as subservient to them, to embrace them. So then it becomes where women get into these spaces that were hitherto reserved for men. When women get into those spaces, they become vulnerable to abuse in different forms because, again, we haven't groomed the men to embrace their presence. So the women get into those spaces we've empowered them to get into, and then they become extra vulnerable to the men that are actually controllers of those spaces because they had been in those spaces for longer. So that is what I see as a bit of a challenge that has exposed women to extra forms of harassment and abuse when they leave the home.
Juliana's comment. I'm taking at it from a holistic point of view. Yes, I know we have come far, but we have a lot of work to do. Like you said, for instance, I'm going back to Sierra Leone. There was a group called 50-50, a bunch of women that came together that wanted, to have 50%, numbers of women in the parliament. Yes, the world celebrated them. The world, they were all over in America, but yet still back home, they couldn't pass one single bill. They couldn't, they had no. Yes, they recognized them that we need to share our power with these women, but there was nothing that could be done. They physically blocked them by these men. So we have to teach our men and women. I'm going back to the women, and I constantly say this: we, the women, are our own worst enemies. We are our own worst heroes. We are our own greatest heroes. We have to teach our men, our boys, women that are mothers. We have to teach our boys that we too, deserve to be at that space, that they don't want us to be there. And it's such a difficult challenge, for women, especially women that want to go into politics or want to go into the public sphere. We are always subject to sexual abuse or just, and we are better than what our outside. And I always say we are better than what's between our legs. We can give better. We can give more to the world than what the men see from the outside. So, it's holistically, yes, the men are blocking us, but we women too have to, tell our brothers, our fathers, our children, our sons, we that have sons have to start in our home, grooming our young boys to say your sisters too can go out there and become the president of this nation, not just to be in the kitchen, not just to be a servant to you. So this is where you have to start, from the home. Then we teach our grown men, but we have to bring the men in. Instead of us just pushing, because if we do that, we're not going to go anywhere. Thank you so much.
My perspective on this question is that from my experience, only one country in Africa and actually around the world has tried to equalize and give women opportunity in the government, and that's Rwanda. as small as the country is, but the government, the leadership has taken the lead to give women opportunity. Compared to this country, I think Rwanda is number one around the world. I think it also, when the leadership, also high leadership, are not giving that opportunity to us, even in our home, our men, or they have our surrounding, it's so hard for us to move. Only as you said, my sister, we have to push ourselves into the greatness that we want to be there. For example, and not bragging myself, from where I come from the village I come from, in Congo, I am the first woman with a PhD degree at this century. You can imagine how behind we are, but I'm not going to sit down to be the only one. Now we are 4 of us, but my hope is that through, by the grace of God, as I continue to change a life of one girl at a time, we are teaching them also how to be a great woman, a woman who have something to say. And when you say something, the government will hear you, the community will hear you, and they will accept you. So it's a matter of teaching, knowing yourself, be confident in each and everything that you do, then the world will accept you. So I always say that there's no single time education will go wrong with you, because the world will know that you have an education, and they will want to use your intellectual capacity to change everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I resonate with all those who have spoken before. For me, when I think about it, it's a matter, we definitely have come a long ways, but we have so much more to go. I always think about the mindset, the cultures and the traditions that have been in place for all these years. It's a matter of using your platform to change the mindset. And so I guess I can give an example. We all have the ability to do that one thing. And for me, I look at it as if you can change one child, and one girl, one boy, you have started the process. It's impossible to kind of like, say, you know what, we're going to change the way things are with the leadership, because these things have been happening for years. But through empowerment and education, as one of the speakers said, it is so key to use your individual platform to see how you can bring that change to the table. And so through like skills training and really trying to make the playing field level for the women, that's one of the key ways I always think about, is giving those opportunities, giving them that voice, giving them that empowerment. Last year when I went to Sierra Leone, I witnessed something. And I always tell people, open your eyes, because, when you think about, okay, what about the problems? Open your eyes. And one of the things as I went to the village, I was visiting with the men and the women, but the men were kind of, more excited to take pictures and to kind of like, be in my presence. And I noticed the women were off side. And again, my eyes were open, and I said, can the women come? Let them come. I want to take pictures. And it was almost like, oh, okay. And it was like that inclusion, inclusion is so key. And I made it a point that I was going to take that and come back and do what I can to give them an opportunity. And through that, in March, we were able to give them their own farm project. So I say that to say that creating your own pathway to this problem, gender-based violence, in your own small measure is one of the best ways that I feel can bring that change, so that 29 years later from now, we have a different story to tell. We have a drastic story to tell, and also another, a better world for our children. Those who have young girls, we look at what we're doing today because we want a better world for them. And we look at our young boys, the speaker I mentioned before about, really changing the mindset of our young boys, because they're going to be men. they're going to be men. And so what we pour into them today will maybe prevent them from being abusers of women tomorrow. So, you know, and using our voices, using and opening our eyes, and the people that are around us, and starting in that way, we can be able to make change. So thank you for that opportunity.
Wow.
Absolutely. I actually just wanted to dovetail on what you just said about, you know, about the culture, changing the culture. And I'm just so grateful to be part of this discussion, because I'm learning here as we're talking, and it really is all about culture. Sia, you had mentioned really starting this work at home. That really is where it has to start, because it's really up to us as women to raise our girls to be strong and to not tolerate this type of behavior or intrusion of their bodies. But it's also up to us to really, you know, teach our sons to be able to be people who know right from wrong. And but I can't help but think, just from the mental health perspective, I'm hearing these words of, you know, a sense of inclusion. I'm hearing the words of creating that culture shift. And in this entire discussion, I am really seeing the major impact that this issue has on the mental health of women. Because when women are in the position when they're being violated, when they're being abused, because it's a cultural thing and it's an acceptable thing, those women, I have to imagine, are feeling like an imposter, feeling like they're unworthy, feeling like maybe they don't belong here anymore, feeling like they want to give up. And that's also going to be felt by their family, because that woman in the family, that woman who is holding everything together, is feeling like she just doesn't belong. And then it's also going to translate into the workplace as well. So just an overarching, you know, tying the two recent comments back together is that it is a huge cultural shift. And we have to be able to shift from this is the way it's always been to this is what is right. And it's a culture thing, and it's not going to happen overnight, but with enough people like us and others who are really committed to this topic, we can really make a difference. But I absolutely see a huge connection with mental health and well-being in this conversation. And it's a huge factor that is not only affected the women and girls, but everyone who they're dealing with. So just a generalized comment on all that.
Thank you, Kim, for that. And one thing that I want also to mention is that our cultures, and we cannot change our cultures, but what we can change is that education. What will help us to change things around is that education, the power of education that will help our women to know their right and to know how to say no. Because I know for fact, coming from where I come from and all the situations that have been going on to date in Congo, and someone just posted a comment there that there are factors that have been also factoring these issues like economic crisis, whereby women, because of the situation they are in, they no longer have a house, they no longer have money to sustain their family, and they just surrender like that. But you know what? Once you have an education, is the key that can transform a life of a child, of a woman, of a girl, and also as Kim, you say, mental health. Some of us from Africa, we don't even recognize that mental health issues. It's another key topic that I would love for you to discuss with all of us, because our community, we do not believe mental health issues, and we call it as a taboo. And even families who have even children with mental issues, they are not even able to come out and share with others, I need help. No, and many children are dying or are going through situation here in America because of holding that cultural belief that, oh, it's a shame to say that my child has that mental issues. For fact, here in Georgia, we just lost a 17 years old boy who killed himself, and he had mental issues that the family were not able to. They came to know it later on, but again, I wish if it was captured before. So these discussions is very educative, very helpful for all of us to continue learning and helping our communities.
Very briefly, absolutely. Very good impact, ladies, very good feedback. And as far as, just narrowing in on the question, those developments, when we talk about inequity, we're talking about the lack of fairness and the lack of justice that is happening within the communities as it relates to women and girls. And we're talking systemic and systematic issues that we need to make sure that we dismantle altogether so that our women and girls get the equal opportunity that they need to be able to eliminate that vulnerability that they're facing all over the globe so that they can thrive and we can all together get rid of the violence that's happening against them because of those systemic and systematic things that have been set in place. And we know because within the last year or so, there's been a lot of light shed on a lot of the situations, especially in social media. We're talking about in communities where, the culture and the race situations are happening within, amongst our women and girls that are causing them to be vulnerable to the point where they're subjected to the violence, and violence we know comes in every shape, form, and I'm sure we're going to unpack that later down the line. But we want to say that these situations, the systemic and the systematic things that have been set in place, those are the things that needs to be dismantled so that our women and girls can thrive and be empowered and that we can eliminate violence against them altogether.
2 years ago or 3 years ago, when JAGILS organized this event, I recall the discussion was how to denormalize behaviors that perpetuate violence against women and children. Now, I will say this though. Now, it is often said that gender-based violence is deeply rooted in discriminatory cultural beliefs, since all of you were talking about culture. And attitudes that perpetuate inequality and powerlessness of women and girls. As a gender advocate, what are some practical steps that we can employ to denormalize cultural behavior that continuously perpetrate gender violence? I mean, you cannot talk about gender violence without talking about culture, because it is rooted in our culture. Sometimes when we talk about culture, folks only think that it is only in Africa. Oh, please no. In every society, every community around the world, culture has played a pivotal role and contributed in perpetrating violence against women. So as advocates, what are can you discuss or share some practical steps that we can employ to denormalize those cultural behaviors that continuously perpetuate violence against women? Let me start with you, Juliana.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would start from us expanding the network for perpetrators. We have, over the years, automatically just place perpetrating of gender-based violence at the doorstep of men, assuming that only men perpetrate abuse against women. But as the years roll by and from the field work, we've noticed that women also perpetrate abuse. And I speak from the current survey that the Girls' Excellence Movement did, titled Sheltered Yet Exposed, where the girls cited their mothers as their greatest perpetrators of verbal abuse. Now, verbal abuse eats away a girl's confidence and self-worth. And this deepens her woes when she gets into the educational system and she's unable to speak for herself. She's unable to defend herself, even though we are giving her an education, because the most important voice in her life, the first contact to the world, the mother, has perpetrated abuse. Now, are the mothers perpetrating abuse because they are wicked? Of course not. Most mothers perpetrate this verbal abuse because they see it as a form of punishment. They see it as a form of discipline. So if we expand the knowledge and understand that perpetrating abuse is not gendered, it's a human trait. And some people do it from a place of malice, while others do it from a place of ignorance. Then we will be now telling mothers and parents to change parenting approaches. So my first point will be changing parenting approaches, because most of our parenting approaches that are deeply rooted in culture actually encourage and normalize abuse because they see it as discipline. And most of these parents who do that, they will brag and tell you, well, that is how I was raised and I turned out good. And so I'm trying to raise my child to turn out good. So they perpetrate abuse boldly because to them it's a form of discipline that they see as very useful. So if we expand the net, then we know that women can perpetrate abuse. Then activism can go towards sensitizing women into changing the disciplinary approaches. The same report revealed that men, which is fathers, top the chart for perpetrating physical abuse towards their daughters. And again, these fathers did that because they think it's a form of discipline. For instance, a girl went out to see a boyfriend, just talked to a male friend. The father sees that as a wayward lifestyle and made this girl, the father, who is a trained military man, made this girl kneel down and slapped her left and right several times. The girl left home, ended up on the street being abused. She became pregnant and she had migraines till today as I speak to you from receiving those multiple slaps that were meant to correct her. So if we expand the net, then we know that women can perpetrate abuse too. Parents can perpetrate abuse too, just like intimate partners are perpetrating it. Then the second one will be to encourage, like I say, I always say that education is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end when we are talking about ending violence against women and girls and against all humanity. Because mostly when we talk about abuse, education doesn't end it. We have PhD holders who are being slapped in marriage every day, and they sit there because the culture is against divorce. So they sit there, they are educated, they know they are right. There are lawyers who are in relationship that they are being physically abused every day, and they are still there because they don't want the backlash that comes from society when they choose to divorce or they choose to separate from the abuser. So we need to also expand that side where we preach education as an end and expand it to mean that education is only a means to an end, and educate our boys also to turn into men who see women as their equal and deal with them from that equal perspective.
Wow, I mean, this is very deep. I could see Sia smiling throughout whilst you're speaking. I mean, this is very deep. Of course, because she's speaking from a research that the Institute has done. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Kellen, let me see your perspective on how do we denormalize the cultural behaviors that perpetuate conflict or that perpetuate continuous perpetration of violence against women.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we need to make sure that we push is advocacy. And as much as advocacy seems to be a broad term, but we really want to be specific about the type of advocacy that we're pushing. We're wanting the cultures to understand that it is okay to speak up. But before we can get into advocacy, we need to educate within the communities, right? So small steps before we get into a larger place with this. Education, bring it into the classrooms, bring it into the homes, bring it into the churches within small groups, informing the community members that it is okay to speak up. Breaking it down to them what violence looks like, as we know, violence takes on different forms. So there's sexual abuse, there's stalking, there's physical abuse, there's psychological abuse that takes place when we talk about violence against women and girls. So we really want to break that down to them and also validating their films, letting them see the different situations that have taken place, the examples and how it has affected individuals, how it affects communities, how it affects families, and how it's affecting women and girls all over the globe. And when we have this education in place, then we can really push for advocacy, which is what's needed. So within the communities, that's how we change culture, letting them know that it is okay to speak up. And so even I use myself as an example, because where I'm from, the Caribbean, it's taboo. It's not a normal thing to speak about your experiences. You've been raped, you've been molested. It's not normal. What society does or the culture does is sweep it under the carpet. So whatever happens in the home stays in the home. Whatever happens in the family stays in the family. But we condone that altogether. It is not right. It is not okay. It is not cool to suppress what you've been through and what you're going through. So we want to build community amongst ourselves. So smaller communities within the larger communities so that we can be able to push and speak. So I think advocacy definitely is a big piece. So we're talking the education piece, the advocacy, and we're talking accountability. So letting the individuals know that there has to be some form of accountability that has to be in place so that other violators understand that it is not okay. So what we're doing is we're sending the signal, we're sending the message to the other violators that it is not okay. And basically, we're coming for you by raising our voice and by building the confidence of our young women who are going to turn into grown women so that they can understand that it's okay to speak up, begin to speak up, and now influence the others to speak up. That's how we're going to begin to change culture within our communities.
Wow. Damn. I mean, this is a very, very powerful, strong statement from you, Kellen. Great. Dr. Dama, let's hear your perspective.
Yeah, so, what I'm hearing now is just really what's always been on my mind is, again, the conversations. The conversations need to continue. That's, for me, one of the biggest ways you can advocate, one of the biggest ways you can really champion, being that voice, voicing out what is wrong, what is right. And that is where I see and tie in that education piece. And so, as I listen, I'm like, if we continue, just imagine if we had these kind of conversations on a regular basis, and we use social media for this kind of a purpose. I feel like that's really how we could be able to reach and get into those areas of improving the statistics. And again, as I always say, start with where you are, and within your platform. As I said, the voice is so much more powerful than you think. And one of the things that I always love to do, to have that engagement and empowerment when I'm working with the communities, and it's like it's really another way to keep these conversations so that they can turn into action. And so through what we're doing with Impact Sierra Leone, one of the things that we launched this year is a program where we could be able to have sensitizing workshops that's linked to skills training, but just having a conversation, having that engagement, men and women at the table, and bringing them so that they can be able to, you can get into the mindset of the cultures. I can't change the culture as a descendant of Sierra Leone, even me in my power. I can't go to Sierra Leone or to other countries and say, I'm here to change what's going on. But I can use an avenue of, empowering women who may have even faced abuse, and teaching them skills, teaching them what's powerful in them so that they can, when I leave, they can be change agents for tomorrow. So continuing the conversation, I feel like it's one of the best practicals that all of us can have, using our social media platforms to promote awareness, to promote causes, especially like what you're doing, Dr. Samuels. I always tell people there's so much power, there's so much good and bad on social media. And it's up to you to promote the good. It's up to you to instill the change from where you are. It's up to you to impact someone around the world. They may see what you're posting and may have a thought process, and may have a mindset shift, and may have a thought that, you know what, maybe my behaviors are not wrong. So I always tell people, use and look and examine at what you're doing in your own space, and know that, you know, people are watching. So social media crosses cultural lines, crosses global lines, and I feel like that's you know, it's a best way, a best practice that you can use to reach people that you can't touch. So using and continuing the conversations, having those webinars, the workshops, that you can be able to bring people to the table, because when you have people at the table, really that's where the conversations of change can happen, that can change this scope. So thank you for this time.
Wow, awesome. Thank you. Sia.
Yes. Hi, Doc. I was smiling because Juliana touched on my subject matter that I'm really passionate about women, violence, women against, you know, creating violence, causing violence against other women, and which is so pervasive in the African community, not just in America, where, you know, I always say the men create the laws, the barriers for women, but the women implement the pain most of the time in our homes, our parents, the way they talk to us, the way they treat us. And especially if you're not their own biological children, the way the man handle you, that's abuse. For instance, I was watching a documentary about in Mauritius, where the women force feed kids as young as 9 and 10, so they can, you know, get fat and look, you know, sexually appealing to men. And these are their mothers doing this to them, so, you know, they can move them on because that's a mouth to feed. So we have to address the root cause. We have to, you know, go in and why the root cause of the problem. We can't just, you know, go on the surface, but from the bottom up. That's when we need to start. Then we have to normalize talking about abuses. We need to teach our children, you know, our African children from other nations, that it is okay to talk about it. Instead of hushing it, instead of making them sweep it under the rug, you know, and we have to empower programs in the community, invest in programs that can help these girls or these women that have been abused by their own family members, by the society, so, you know, to thrive in. And we have to have our partnership with our politicians, our elected, our religious-based community. Is partnership. You know, our single person cannot solve this issue. We have made this problem. We are going to leave this problem for our children. Our children are going to deal with this. So we have to find a way to work together. I see a lot of women have different programs going on. Well, if we can come together and collaborate, and like we are having this discussion right now, a lot of these issues, you know, we've been known. We have to talk about it. We have to have campaigns and talk about, you know, gender-based violence in our community, in our household, in churches. It is everywhere. It is not just in Africa. It's not just in Europe. It happens as well here. So we have to really, you know, talk about it every day and normalize. And psychologically, we have to tell these young girls that it's not their fault. We have to tell these women that it's not their fault for them to be abused. So is it okay for them to come out and speak about it? Because when you speak about it, somebody else will know. Another young child will know that, okay, what my parent did to me, or what my brothers or father did to me is not right. Let me talk about it. And we need to stop shaming our women. We need to stop shaming our women. And majority of the time, it's us women that shame another women. If we can help another woman, let's don't shame them. We are always shaming ourselves. And we need to stop glorifying violence on TV. Women violence on TV. We need to stop glorifying that. We have all these housewives going on, they fight themselves, they tearing themselves down, and our kids at home think that that's normal. It's okay for you to beat yourself up. It's okay for a man to lay their hands on you. We need to stop glorifying those things. Thank you so much.
Wow. I know Sia is always very passionate. You know, anytime she speaks, I almost cry. But I told myself today I'm not going to cry. All right, Dr. Grace, what do you think about all that?
Well, first of all, in our cultural belief, sexual topic in our homes, it is not there. We do not have that platform to discuss those topics. I don't know about where you come from, but in my culture, from where I come from, I never had anything about sexual topic in my home. So in our program, African Girls Up Foundation, we have 3 years ago, we started to have a girl talk where we'll bring our girls from Africa and we take them to a safe place. Let me say in a hotel where we'll be there for a whole weekend. And then we discuss those topics that they are not able to discuss home. And we discuss openly. And I hear every girl sharing deep from their heart, every experience they have gone through. And one thing that have surprised me is that I've come to realize almost 20% of the girls who come, they have a similarity of issues that they have gone through in their homes. And that has been so surprising. And I'm like, this program, we need to continue because it's a safe place for them to share deeply, openly, and they know that it's confidential within us, but they are bringing out all the pain that they have been there in their chest. So what we have also created is also a platform where we have a discussion with parents. And we have started partnering with churches and different ministries. And then we'll have a conference for all of us, and we have discussion for women, mothers and fathers and youth. And then we come together and then we bring a solution or a suggestion to all the topic that we wanted to discuss about. We discuss about, and there now they will take that education in their home and make a use for it and change the way they used to live in their home. So I believe that the platform of discussion every single time with our communities helps a lot. So including this one, it's one of the way we are learning from one another, and we'll take every education from one another, and we take it to our platform area and our community and our work, and continue to share with the people that we are helping to grow. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Kim.
Wow.
I know.
I have so much to say that I'll all tie it all into mental health, but wow. So psychological safety came up on many occasions in multiple discussions there. And if we don't feel psychologically safe at home, if we don't feel psychologically safe at work, we don't feel safe enough to talk about the things that matter. And Grace talked about a group where you're creating safe spaces for open dialogue. That is exactly, again, in my professional work as a corporate trainer in the workplace, I teach leaders how to create a safe place. And a safe place is a place where there is zero judgment, there is zero shame, it's 100% empathy, understanding, and inclusion. It's the same thing in this situation. And I wanted to say as well that I kept hearing over and over and over again from multiple people on this panel that it's normal to sweep things under the carpet. You're not allowed to speak about the terrible things that happen. And I want you to really think about it from the mental health perspective for a moment. If you are forced to take every horrible thing that has happened to you and stuff it down deep inside you, just kind of maybe envision a beautiful wooden box deep down in your soul. And that's where all of those things go. And then there's a lock on that box because you're not allowed to express those emotions, touch those emotions, really talk about them. They go in that box. That box gets heavier and heavier day by day, and every single thing that happens to that young girl or that woman. And there is going to be a certain time, a certain instance where it's going to trigger that box to open. And it could be completely unexpectedly. And that's where you could have those instances of suicidal ideations. That's where you could have those instances again, where I don't belong. I'm an imposter. I don't belong on this planet. And by having those safe spaces that Grace was talking about, where other people can share their story. I share my story of living with suicidal thoughts my entire life and how I got through it. And every time I share about that, people come forward and say, I thought I was the only one. So we really must, and I'm not sure how to do all this, but we do have to normalize talking about the bad things. Because when we don't talk about them, and when we stuff them away, we feel like we're the only one. That box that we're carrying around every single day is covered in shame. You feel dirty. And it could lead to extreme mental health challenges. So in essence, we do have to provide education and awareness about these things and bring it to the surface so that people who have been raised to think that it is normal for these behaviors and experiences to happen are exposed to the fact that it's not normal and it's not okay. And then lastly, I don't know if you can see this here, but I have a tattoo on my arm that says, speak your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that there because I had a situation about 1.5 years ago that could have ended a completely different way if I was courageous enough to speak my truth. And someone told me, the same person who told me to dream big, Dr. Abby, that person told me, you have to speak when it is the most difficult thing for you to do, because it's the only way to get to the other side. You have to speak your truth. And I refer to my forearm on many occasions when I have to have difficult conversations, but I know that if I don't speak, that my box inside is going to fill up, and that is not good for me or anyone else. So I know that was a lot, but this whole conversation has been a lot, but I'm really happy to really tie in and bring forward everything that you're discussing, how it really contributes to the mental health and well-being of women and young girls who are experiencing these things.
Awesome. I know there's a lot of questions and follow-up. I'm also looking at the time. We've already done an hour, believe it or not. I don't want to keep all of us waiting. So what I'm going to do, but before I get into that, and Kim, you are absolutely right. You see, the problem that I believe has contributed to our societal problem is rightly so, because sometimes we tend to peg ourselves in a certain level, and we are entitled to certain societal expectations and behavior. And so when you're going through a problem, you cannot even bring yourself down to have a conversation. You know, that is one thing that I have tried never to allow myself to find into, because it has come to a place where if I have a problem, I walk to my wife. We talked about it. I said, hey, I'm going through this problem. You know, I recall there was once upon a time, I walked to a friend and I said, listen, I'm trying my possible best to do everything to see her become a leader of her community. But our society is not pulling their weight enough behind her. Now, what can I do? You know, it's a burden. I didn't share with Sia because I don't want her to feel disencouraged. So I spoke with somebody else about what else can we do to support her behind the scene so that she'll become successful. When there are things in our mind and we don't speak up, unfortunately, like you rightly said, they eat us up. Society suppresses who we are, and we are unable to become what God wants us to do. Thank you very much for those conversations. Now, I think it's time to open the forum for questions other than the ones I'm asking. And so if there is anyone who wants to ask a question, Huda, I see your hand up. You want to ask a question, you can go ahead, unmute yourself. You can direct your question.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, it's not a question anyways, but I just want to say I'm excited that I'm part of this discussion today, because I am presently in Sierra Leone, And I know what it means when you talk about violence against women. Maybe me, myself, have been fortunate not to actually be a victim, but through my foundation, Defend You, I've actually positioned myself to actually focus on these issues because most times we think that it's just the violence, but again, this violence leads to psychological problems and depression. And mind you, it is very easy for our African moms to detect a pregnant child, but it is not easy for our moms to detect a depressed child. And they feel like when you start behaving some certain type of way, you just want to be rude, you just want to be disrespectful. We've grown up in a society wherein we must respect our African parents, and our silence is killing us. I told my mom, I said, look, I said, when we grew up in a way wherein we're scared to speak. I said, but now that I'm a teenager and I'm growing into an adult, and now that I understand, I want to change the narrative. I want to break the chain. I need people to speak up. Being an advocate as a young girl, age of 24 right now, I've told people that if other people cannot speak, I need to be the channel. And then not only being the channel, but encourage them to speak. I actually run a home right now, an orphanage home, and I have up to 8 girls, and I know what it means. My purpose for these young girls is for them to be young ladies in society that at the end of the day, they will not be taken advantage of. That is one. And I have a situation at hand right now that was very critical for me to deal with. But when I look back again, I said, oh, this could be a case study for me. I have a girl of 16 years of age. She came from the province and her mom said she should come and stay in the home. But it was very disturbing for me. She started falling sick. What happened? Took her to the hospital and I found out she was pregnant. So when I encouraged her to speak, she started telling me, oh, she never had somebody to speak to, not even her mom, because her mom handed her over to the uncle to take her to the province. And her uncle drove her out of the house in the middle of the night. Out of the house, imagine in the village, there is no light. She was out of the house. A lot of people passed her, and there was only this one guy that saw her and gave her shelter. And what did the guy do? He took advantage of her. After taking advantage of her, now she didn't even know she's pregnant. She now came to town and then she's with me. This kind of person, you don't have to send them back. Instead, you have to look for a solution. Because I thought of her mental health. I thought of the way they just, abused her. I thought of the maltreatment from her uncle, and I thought of the neglect from her mom. So with all that alone, she's going through a psychological problem. This is a very interesting thing for me. I'm happy to be among young, or let me say, powerful women here today, great leaders. Good evening, Auntie Adama. Good evening, Auntie Sia. These are two women I always look up to and say, you know what? I know I'm growing, but when I grow, I really want to be like them. So thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs, and all the wonderful ladies out here. I'm sure we are making a change and we definitely make a change out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that powerful contribution. I can tell you that the story you just shared touched me. I will speak with Kim, and between Sia and Dama, we'll be able to bring Kim to Sierra Leone to help with mental health discussion to make it much easier for people. Yes, Sia, yes, please.
This young girl, I'm so proud of her. She always, bring tears to my eyes, and she's doing such a good job at a young age and in such a male-dominant society. And, she have took the stand to stand up and speak for other young girls like herself. And I am so proud of you, Oda. But I rarely share this, story of mine. But I think during the election, I did share it on a platform. She brought back memories because I was molested as a child when I was 10 years old. My dad and my mom divorced, and my dad had to travel all over the world. So he handed me over to his friend, which I call uncle. And the uncle happened to travel, and they left me with this young man in the house, took advantage of me. But, I couldn't say a word. It took me 20-something years for me to open my mouth and say I was abused. That thing ate me up. It broke up my marriage. Because I was so angry. I was such an angry woman. You would not want to be around me because I didn't know how to speak up. How was I going to, because he was a child of a paramount chief. How can I go and say, oh, he abused me? Instead, I would have been bitten like a dog. It was 25 years later, I was able to confront my aunt, the lady that I was staying with, and I told her. And you know what she told me? I knew something was wrong, but you never came up to me to talk to me. Well, then in Sierra Leone, can you imagine a 10-year-old going to a woman? Yes, telling her, oh, somebody abused me? So this is the reason why I'm so passionate about girls. When Juliana was speaking about our mothers and the women, this is the reason why, because I didn't have protection. We have to stand up for other young girls. We have to be the voice, the ears, the eyes for other women. Let's make the space available for them to speak. Their voice matters as well. Not just, the abuse of women is a lot in the community and in the world. But we women have to protect each other and stand. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Tell that young lady that she's going to make it.
Sure.
She's going to make. I was a teenage mother, and I'm here today. She's going to make it.
Definitely. I'm going to do all that by God's grace. Definitely.
Awesome. All right. So I know there's a lot of hands, a lot of questions are coming to my personal inbox. But before that, Naya, all the way in Cameroon, she's always present in this event. She's a grandmother. She has a lot of experience. Mama, do you want to share some experience with us? Because we've heard all that has been said about the role that parents played in addressing some of these challenging issues. Do you want to share some of your experience with us?
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Yes,
I'm so grateful to be among you people this evening. It's a morning in America, but in Cameroon, it's in the evening. Mm-hmm. I am Honorable Naya Lekunze Celine. I was happy when my sister talked about politics, how she has been struggling in politics. I'm a regional councillor, and it was not easy for me to fight the men. I want to inform you people or to advise you women that power is seized. Power is not given easily. Mm-mm. So when we want power, we have to fight for it. But let the women learn to support each other. Because the problem to us women is always the women who will not want to see their sisters go ahead of them. Mm. They want us always to be at the same level. Mm. Yes, when we talk about violence against women, against girls, we forget that so many men are going under violence in our hands. When we get up in the morning, we discover that a man has hung himself. What made your husband to hang himself? Your husband has disappeared, and then they only find him in the bushes, hanging on a tree. What was the cause of your husband's death? I think when we want to carry out awareness creation, then it should be at all levels, not only on the girls, not only on the boys, not only on the women, but we have to carry out awareness creation in violence against everybody in the society. In our country, because of the war that is going on, women are vulnerable and are being attacked at all sides. The army is raping the women. The boys in the bushes are raping the women. They are kidnapping women, even old women like myself, into the bushes and asking for ransom. So is this caused by the girls? Is it caused by the women? Who is causing all this? The war in Africa is bringing up a lot of vulnerability in our society. And so much is going on. People are really suffering. Mental violence is too much in our country. People are going in too much. They are suffering because of violence in Africa. How are we going to solve this violence in Africa? This war every day is my cry. How are we going to solve these wars? Because when you look deeply into what is happening in countries because of this violence, you see that most of those countries that are suffering inside violence have passed through war. And you know that after war, so much has taken place. We have shed innocent blood. The innocent blood is there crying and is affecting the population. I myself, I didn't grow in my mother's hands. My father died when I was just 8 years. I passed through a lot. But I thank God because I was God-fearing. And as I was prayerful, nobody raped me until I grew to maturity and got married. So I really thank God for that because I passed through a lot. I did not grow with my mother. I passed from one hand to another because I wanted to go to school. And we're not having schools. So, Doctor, thank you for giving me the floor. I want to say that we should not only begin to, gather every day and then we talk. We should take some actions in Africa.
Yes.
We should take action on what we can do. We should sit down and discuss and think what we can do to solve these problems. Because we can continue to talk like this even for 5 years, for 10 years. And when we have not taken any action, we don't solve any problem. Solving a problem is looking at the root cause and then looking for a solution for the problem. Thank you, people, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you for your great words of wisdom. Thank you for all that. So there's a question for you here on the platform, Kelly. And the question to you says that other than education, what do you feel like that can be done culturally and within a household to prevent sexual abuse and molestation? Kelly?
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Samuel. What a very thought-provoking question. It's taking me back a lot in my experiences as a survivor of molestation and rape. Yes, so other than education, there are a lot more that we can do, a lot more practical steps that we can take to make sure that we're bringing more awareness within the culture itself. One of the things that we can do is to create and increase more visibility of young women within these discussions like the one that we're having right now. And another thing that we can do is also to include survivors and their stories a lot more in discussions, as others who are currently going through some form of violence or have gone through can be able to identify and relate, seeing and hearing someone else who's been there speak about their experiences. I must say, it takes a lot of courage to be able to speak about the experience altogether. A lot of courage. And as a lot of you have already acknowledged, there is a heavy psychological impact on the life of the individual who are dealing with or have dealt with such situation. The traumatic impact is unmeasurable. And in most times, the individuals become suicidal or they're faced with dealing with suicidal ideations their entire lives. And as the mother correctly said earlier, without any actions, there can be no solutions. So creating those visibilities and the storytelling are a few practical things, action steps that we can take to minimize or eliminate altogether violence against women and girls and making sure that we're changing the culture in and of itself. I hope that helps.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Juliana, there's a question for you here. It says that you kept working with young girls around the globe. How do you ensure that they do not lose their values? At the same time, how do you also empower them to speak up when appropriate?
I'm sorry, I didn't get a question. Can you please repeat it?
Sure. It said you've been working with girls across the globe. How do you ensure that these girls do not lose their values? And how do you also encourage them to speak up appropriately when appropriate?
For ensuring they don't lose their value, we teach them the importance of their value system, importance of having it and all that. But then because we have an interface with them and they go back home and they spend more time with their home structures more than we do, I cannot say that I have a way of ensuring. That's a strong word to say. So I would really provide responses to the second part of the question, which talks about how do we teach them to speak up. So to speak up, you must first of all know that what is being done around you or to you is wrong or right. So we teach them what we call sexual consent. And the sexual consent, we teach them to identify when somebody is violating a boundary. We teach them to set up personal boundaries and protect it and speak up when somebody is violating it. We teach them to identify when somebody is crossing that boundary, because sometimes girls entertain abuse because they don't really know it is abuse, because they come from homes that have normalized that as something else. For instance, if a girl comes from a home where she is beaten and told later that, you know what, I beat you because I love you so much and I don't want you to become a bad girl in future, that's why I'm beating you. She grows up and entertains beating as part of love. It is the love language in her mind. So we teach them to know that this is wrong. So set a boundary around it. We teach them how to set the boundary, how to identify when someone is violating those boundaries, and what to do when someone does that. We also teach them to speak up and the importance of speaking up. And I want to share on speaking up. Mostly we teach them to speak up, and then we also tell them to go for justice. I want to say that mostly we talk about justice in the form of just putting the perpetrator away in jail or taking the perpetrator through a justice system. But I want to say another aspect of justice that we haven't talked about most in advocacy, which is healing for the abused. Healing. When you put the perpetrator in jail, you haven't healed the abused. So the abuse needs to be given resources deliberately to heal them. Otherwise, the perpetrator might be in jail and society claps for itself for, yay, we put the perpetrator in jail. You should go ahead and be happy. Of course, they can't go ahead and be happy because they haven't received healing. So we talk to the girls about speaking up, mostly because it gives them the opportunity to access healing resources.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. So a question for you here, Sia. And it says that, so how do you ensure that mothers are engaged in the conversation for them to understand their role in curbing sexual and domestic violence against the woman and the child?
The ensure word is but you know, one thing I've realized, you know, I don't in what context, in America or in Africa, is that what they're asking? Because in Africa, our mothers don't tell us that they love us. Our mothers don't have conversation with us. Our elder sisters don't have conversation with us. If they're young, if they're older than you, they say, "Oh, you're not in our crowd. You don't supposed to sit around us." We need to we need to normalize our mothers telling us they love us, they hug us, to pay attention to us. But, like somebody said before, the culture, we have to, I know we can't change the culture, but there are things that we can change. We need to teach these mothers that it's okay. Hugging your daughter, telling them you love them, telling them that they are great, telling them that their bodies are not just meant for sex, for them to grow up and marry off. It's okay. We need to normalize that in the African community. And that's a start from the beginning. The way in America, you are in school, they will tell you, if somebody touch you this way, it's an abuse. We hug our children, we go beyond, why can't we do the same thing for people outside of America? We need to teach our mothers. I know they got it from their own, mothers, because that's how they were brought up. They are quick to tell you, oh, that's how I was brought up. But we have to change that. So I don't know if that can ensure that, they don't get abused, but we have to start from somewhere. Our mothers have to be friends to their daughters and a companionship, have conversation. Some mothers have never had conversation with their young daughters. We need to start having conversation.
Can I add something to what Sia just said?
Yes, you can.
Yes. In having conversations with our daughters, we also need to encourage their agency. Children naturally come to this world with agency, but we parent it out of them as parents. Yes. So, for instance, a child is very close to an uncle, a family member, a family friend, or a religious leader. All of a sudden, that child doesn't want to see or hang around or hug or be touched by such a person. Instead of the family slowing down to find out what's happening, they force that child. They say, come on, go back and hug uncle. Why didn't you greet uncle? For uncle has started touching her in ways she finds inappropriate. So as a way and as a call for action for mothers or for parents in general to ensure that children don't get abused, let's respect their agency. When they start withdrawing from somebody, let's as parents start investigating what might have triggered that withdrawal instead of pushing them back into the arms of such a person who might be a perpetrator.
Wow, that's very great. That's very great. And so thank you so much, Juliana, for sharing that. So Kim, the question that I was asking is that now we've talked about this complex subject of both psychological and mental health awareness in curbing this challenge and this problem. Now, in the framework of your 4 pillars of mental health, how does that integrate into partnering with civil society organizations to address the problems that we are dealing with?
Oh boy. So it's first about really teaching people, teaching organizations, teaching large groups to recognize that the problem exists and really look at the statistics and what those statistics are doing, what the outcomes of those statistics really are. I know in the workplace, actually around the globe, 1 in 5 people are living with a mental health condition. That's 20% potentially of your workforce. That's 20% of the people around you who could be living with a mental health condition and are too afraid to speak about it. So then the other pillar about sharing our stories, it's very well documented through the National Alliance on Mental Illness that the most effective antidote to decreasing stigma around mental health is sharing our stories, to bring that lived experience, bring the human connection. So it's the same thing in this situation. It's about bringing girls together, bringing women together and sharing their stories in a safe way and in a safe place. But we first have to recognize that there's a problem and be able to start removing that stigma. The third pillar of the program that I teach in the workplace talks about getting rid of stigma, decreasing stigma. And we look at the power of words. And I've been trying to really kind of pick up on some words here throughout this discussion, but they're not coming to the forefront right now. But I will just share with you just a couple of words that come to the forefront of my mind that are heavily stigmatized. Maybe you can help me when it comes to violence against women and girls. But in the mental health field, you're called a crazy, nuts, psycho, junkie, addict, alcoholic, lunatic, frequent flyer. All of those words are covered in shame and discrimination. And all of those words are barriers for people who in any particular conversation might want to come forward and say, I'm having a problem. So what are some of the words that we're using in the sphere of violence against women, violence against girls, that we really need to change? Because words have power. And then finally, it would be really about creating, when I speak about culture, I'm talking about culture in the workplace. But when we're speaking about culture here today, we're talking about a very large cultural thing. But someone in the chat had mentioned getting rid of the belief that everything that happens in our lives has to stay within the four walls of our home, because it's so it's so shameful to speak about it in the open, when in reality, the more we speak about it, the more people will recognize that they're not alone. The more we can educate people about the power of language and looking at people as, instead of a psycho, nuts, junkie, or an alcoholic, that's a person who's living with mental health condition, a person who's living with substance misuse, a girl who is living with post-traumatic stress disorder because of the violence that was inflicted upon her. Don't call her crazy or psycho. She's a person who is living with a condition like that. So to answer your question, the 4 pillars are to recognize the impact of mental health or violence. It is to share that lived experience, change the perception of the issue of mental health by decreasing stigma, and then creating that culture, whether it be overall organizational culture or just going from one culture to another, that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to pretend that you're okay. So I hope that kind of answered your question. I could probably speak for hours on that, but I want to.
No, I know. No, it did. Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback about the storytelling. It really is. I feel like it's one of the best ways that you can really draw to people who have been through traumatic, because hearing your story usually opens the doors. You don't even know it's opening a door to someone who has been silent, who has been mute because of what they have faced. So I really love that we are talking about that, but also breaking the barriers and using our voice. This is something that I've been standing on, and having the ability to bring it into like this kind of a platform. But one of the things my mind is like, I need to find ways to have more workshops whereby the women and the men can sit at the table, and that engagement, that exchange. I don't really feel like there's positive conversations that are happening. There's so much balled up inside of people. They're stressed, they're impoverished. And because of the cultures and what they're going through, that's the only way that they can believe in their mind that they can de-stress. So I just wanted to piggyback on the storytelling and just, using that, adding that's another way, creating workshops and areas where we could have them speak out and speak up and have that safe space of having a conversation. So just wanted to add that.
Can I say something as well?
That's very important. Yes, yeah.
Storytelling is great, but to whom do we tell the story? Because sometimes when we tell our stories, the stories are being used against the victim. So that stops a lot of people from telling their stories because they are being shamed. The previous speaker said, shaming people, calling them crazy. Oh, you're crazy. You are this, you're that. So to whom, it's great that we tell our stories, but to whom do we tell our stories that it was not going to be used against, the victim? You know, we see that all the time in the community. You know, a victim will come up and say, somebody did this to me, but they will in turn, you know, victimize the person twice again. So it's a fine line. It's great. I believe in storytelling. I tell my stories all the time, and you know, I don't care what people say. I have an open book. Being in politics, you have to have an open book. So, but for people that are not strong like me, are not going to be comfortable telling their stories, because if they tell their stories and somebody make fun of them or shame them, they're going to close in.
I think
That's right.
and I think that's a really great point that you bring up. And I think it takes a lot of courage to share your story. And I think many people are able to share their story once they've gone through that healing process. I know that very quickly, my story is I was a high performing corporate professional who hid behind high performance to conceal major depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and alcohol misuse. I got sober in 2009, but I did not speak openly about it to anyone until 2016. I wasn't able to. I wasn't able to really see myself as a person, as someone who was worthy, as someone who had actually just changed my entire life by doing one of the things that was the most difficult for me. I could not have shared my story in 2009. I was only able to share it once I accepted that I am a good person and that I'm proud of the work that I did to get to where I am today. And now it's time to turn around and extend my hand and share it with others. And when my story is shared now, if someone does have a negative piece of feedback, or I've never been victimized by sharing my story, but if that were to happen, I'm at the point like you, Sia, I'm strong. I can take it. And I'm able to defend myself. So it's very important to point out that we can only share our stories once we have truly healed. And I don't think we'll ever 100% be healed. But it's a point where you get and you say, my healing is not for nothing. It's time for me to share it with others. So just wanted to piggyback on that.
Awesome. Awesome.
Just a one quick one. Yeah, and I definitely agree with Sia and Kim. You know, there definitely have to be levels of storytelling. I guess once you get to a point where you have, again, healed and you have a platform and you have the ability to reach people in that manner with no regret, definitely being able to use your platform. You don't know who's listening, you don't know who's watching. And when they do reach out, because people do reach out, especially on social media, people text me just from different things I post, and they're like, you know, thank you for sharing that. And so it's just the power of connections, the power of people resonating and connecting with you. They're saying, you know, that story that you shared, I just wanted to say from behind the scene. So it's my responsibility to protect that person, to listen to them, to respond to them. And if I'm a way to mentor, help them, you know, find that avenue. But in what I was kind of referencing is just in the space of maybe having a workshop and having the conversations, a general conversation about things that, you know, we need to be aware of. And if there's someone who would want to follow up with that, you know, you get that opportunity, but definitely not in a space where everyone share what you've been abused by, you know, given a platform. So I think definitely agreeing with the speakers, there has to be a level of how you tell your story, and definitely whom you tell your story to, because social media can be vicious, and people can be vicious from behind the scenes just because. So I thank you for adding that. And this is education. Even what we're all being educated, and that's the beauty of having the conversation. You learn from one another. You learn, and I know I've soaked up a lot from today, and what I'm going to do when I go to Sierra Leone in December. Well, we're in December. I'm sorry, but just having this platform today is a blessing. And I think that there's people that we may not see that are listening and are watching, and they're tuned in. And I think they're going to take a piece from something today. And maybe they're going to have a conversation. Maybe they're going to, you know, look at their mom and say, Mom, tell me I love you. So I'm just grateful for this ability. And I hope that from here, we're going to have part 2, part 3, part 4, and more in 2023. Women are going to be leading conversations like this with women, because I'm hearing that, you know, with abuse, women are abusing each other physically, verbally, and they don't even know it. So I hope that 2023 will lead us into an avenue where we're talking more about these issues, and we're going to have more advocacy from behind, and the professionals that are here, the work that they're doing will be put in a greater use. So the conversation that we have today, I hope this is just part one of many.
Doc, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, many. I heard that. All right, great. So we have a book. Is it book? Dumbuya.
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you very much. Let me tell them if I can see myself. Good day. Can you see me? I've just turned. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you though.
Okay. Let me see. I'll try to.
It's okay. Yeah, we can see you now.
Apologies. I didn't prepare for this, but firstly, I would like to say thank you to Serafino. She told me this, and also it's a pleasure to be here with you and Dr. Adama and Jacob. Thank you for creating this opportunity for beautiful and inspiring men to come together to talk. And just to be brief, my name is Bak, short for Bakari Dumbia. I'm a social entrepreneur. I do so many things. When you get to know me, I'm into fashion, I write books, and then I'm one of those silent people that work behind the scenes, mentoring women, young people, and I work with ladies. So I've written about 4 books throughout the pandemic week. I co-author 4 books, and one of them is to do with mental health. And 2020, WHO, I think, or World Health Organization, they published a report, and the report says that 800,000 people committing suicide every year. And 2021, I think it went down to 700,000. But even a life is valuable. And when you look at the statistics, when you look at the report, you find out that you have some of this domestic violence, you have gun crime, you have men issues, and some of the ladies, they've talked about the importance of bringing men into this conversation, and some of the critical factors associated with it. And coming from different academic background as well as professional background, for example, in the field of design making, we use storytelling, and storytelling is very, very important, but it depends on the nature, the platform, the environment. And Serafino mentioned about the environment, where to who. Those questions are very critical. They're very, very important. For me, I have been through so much crisis. I've been through different situations I could have committed suicide, and I've helped people not to commit suicide. So experiencing the civil war crisis, coming to the UK, living here for 22 years, and we're talking about PTSD, and psychology changed my mindsets. This was 2005. I was a young boy, UK. I used to be stressed, experiencing. So I don't have all of this, like this conversation we're having here. Imagine without me having this knowledge, and then I'll find a partner, and then there's no healing process to deal with that trauma, the abuse perhaps I've gone through. Even when I was 5, I was abused. I didn't even know about sexual abuse until I lived in the UK. But vividly, as a young boy, the lady who actually sexually abused me, I never spoke with never had that conversation with any of my family up to date. But I've spoke about it, but as I said, psychology education helped me to be the person I am. One of the lessons I learned when I started speaking up, it was the time when I was asked to choose a specific subject to talk about as part of the assessment under psychology, and I chose stress. I don't know, for whatever reason, not knowing that God was trying to pave the way to the person I am today. And long story short, so I chose stress. During the assessment, during my research, and one of the lessons I learned is that when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with stressful situation, find someone you can speak with. That's one of the coping strategy. But you need to be aware, as Sia, eloquently articulated herself. You need to know who to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
And when you express yourself, that tension that you have, if you speak with your mind, you speak the truth, and then you find someone who can listen to you, show empathy. Empathy is a very, very critical word. And I've written a book. I've got couple books to publish. One to do with parenting, and the one to do with the philosophy of the mind. And one of the speakers words, and then I'll connect it. I don't want to say much about it, but I talked about it in my upcoming book. The power of words for people who read the Bible. So there is life and death in our tongue. And first thing I say, if it wasn't to do with education, to do with the fact of that I embrace the philosophy of words, to embrace it, I wouldn't have been the person I am today. And I'm connecting this, and then I'm going to go straight to the point for you guys to understand, because most of these so-called perpetrators that we have, male figures.
I want you to be landing so I can touch down quickly.
Say again?
I want you to be landing so we get a few more questions before we wrap up.
It's very, very important, because people start to develop a sense of culture to be abusive, and then also to express their anger with violence. So if we don't deal with the behind the scenes issues, for example, culture, we can change culture. Culture is mindset, it's words. Personalization starts from home, and from home education. So it's a complex issues to eradicate crime against women in society, marriage, educational system. I've seen it because I work with women. We have to be critical in a way that we face the truth, to understand that education, communication, and also collaboration, and then with the truth, then we'll work with the right people, because mental issues, we all face with mental issues, but we need to actually embrace the mindset of having that sense of humanity, and also find the right people to speak to. And I've been through stressful situations. I've been through counseling, and I'm not crying anyone down. Many of the people who are actually practicing as a counselor, they don't have this sense of understanding to deal with complex. Question is, my sister was abused in a marital home. She wanted to commit suicide, and it affected her son. They wanted to commit suicide. They're in Sierra Leone. I'm here helping them because of my psychological background and my approach. And I work with, as I said, I work with people. And if I wasn't alive, perhaps my sister and his son, they would have been dead. So now, how can we work as a community? Because women can come together as great. But the question is, the women, are there? Who are the people they have behind them? We need to have. I've been to women organization. They don't have their brothers and sisters and men. Maybe I'll be one or two. So we need men.
I'm so sorry. We have to end that. I know you are making a very important point. I'm following, but I also want to give other people from other parts of the world opportunity to speak. I'm so sorry. But I think we grasped what you said. I really appreciate the level of diversity you have in the area of helping and promoting this great awareness. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Appreciate it, Burki. Great. All right, Christopher Dapa. Is Christopher there? Okay, so I think we lost Christopher. Well, I am also looking at the time, and we've gone 2 hours, and so we are wrapping up now at this point. If there are no other questions coming directly, I know there's a lot of questions on the chat room, and you guys can also look at the questions there and respond through the chat as well. I just want to be a respecter of time and to make sure that we don't keep people for too long. So in future, when we invite you, you will come again. And so if there's no other direct question, I will ask the panelists to give us their wrap-up statements, and then we will end our conversation for today. So why don't we begin with Dr. Adama, if you don't mind giving us your wrap-up statement.
Thank you so much. This was incredible, empowering, inspiring, and everything else. I am going to leave here and share the nuggets that I received from today. I'm going to use my voice to reach the young girls that I'm working with in Sierra Leone, the women that I'm working with in Sierra Leone, and hopefully, again, continuing the conversation. And even in my home, my sisters, I have 3 sisters, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I've had good conversations with them. So I really appreciate today, and I hope that in our own spaces that we use our power for good, because we're all powerful. As I've listened, we all have a power that we can reach and be able to impact this gender-based violence issue that leads to so much. And just want to say thank you to Dr. Jacobs-Abby for choosing me to be here and to be a part of this space, this family. So God bless everyone, and let us continue to use our voices and to change and inspire the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adama. God bless you. Thank you so much. All right, can I have Sia?
Okay. Oh, wow. What a wonderful conversation we had today. I am so grateful for all the women, that took the time out of their busy schedules to come and share their own, expertise with us. I am really grateful to be in this space. This is the kind of space I want to be in, where we find solutions, not only solutions, but we're using practical. Let's go now into the field and use what we've gathered here today and pass it on. And, women, we are so powerful. We are so powerful. If we know our worth, we'll move mountains. We'll break mountains down. But we have to work together. We have to work together. Togetherness is everything. Our biggest fault is that we don't work together. If we can come together, the world will be a different place for us. And use empathy. Love one another. It's me and you, nobody else. So I want us to work together as, sisters, mothers, grandparents. Let's stand together as one against this, human right violation that every one of us at one point in our life, we're going to experience it. If we don't, our children are going to. So we have to be, the pioneers for our children to come. I want to thank Dr. Jacob. Thank you so much for your love, for your support, for your unwavering support. I want to say hi to Dr. Adama and all the other women. I adore you guys. If you guys need anything, let me know. I would love to work. I would love to partnership with each and every one of you and see how we can move mountains. We can do it. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure. It's an honor meeting each and every one of you. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kim?
Well, thank you so much for an amazing, eye-opening conversation for me personally. And it was an honor to be one of the panelists here and be able to speak about how violence against women and young girls really intersects with mental health. And I applaud each and every one of you. You are all powerful women and men here, and your commitment to really coming together and having these types of discussions is amazing. And you're the people I love to be around, because you're the people who see a problem and don't turn a blind eye. You say, I may not have all those solutions, but let's come together and figure this out. So it has been a true honor to be here with all of you. And I thank you, Dr. Abby, for inviting me to join. And I would love to connect with each and every one of you on social media, email, have conversations with you, and really keep this topic going. It's a crucial conversation that has to continue and has to come out of the shadows. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kelly?
Well, thank you, Dr. Samuel, for this great effort of bringing us together to raise our voice to end violence against women and girls. I want to thank each and every one of you in the panel. Thank you so much. It's just so amazing speaking alongside all of you. And I hope this does not end here. Thank you, the audience, for joining us. We would not have been able to do this without you. I just want to ring the alarm that in 1947, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was enacted by the United Nations. And this is one of the great strides that we have made. And as of this month, Biden have also passed the law against violence against women and girls. So we are making great strides as far as policy. Let's take it to social media. Let's continue to raise awareness. Let's continue our storytelling and be intentional about what we want to see, our desirable outcomes for these women and girls. As a survivor, I must say it takes great courage to change the story, but we can change our stories one individual at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time, making global impact. Thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Juliana. Okay, I think Juliana is having some network problems. Otherwise,
thank
Dr.
you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you to my lovely co-panelists. I learned a lot listening to each and every one of you. Thank you to the audience. We are grateful to have you to listen to us. My takeaway that I want to share and tell everyone going back home to take back to activism, to take back to politics, to every boardroom that they have a voice, is that let's unite to degender abuse perpetrating. We have gendered it, made it a one gender thing. Abuse, violence, being able or willing to commit violence is a human thing. It's not gendered. Let's degender so we can get everyone involved in perpetrating in any way to become aware that we all can be perpetrators, and it will take all of us again to end it. Thank you all.
Wow, that's very powerful. Thank you so much. Dr. Grace have to leave, so unfortunately she's not here to wrap up. But I want to take this opportunity once again to thank all of you for coming over to support, spend 2 hours of your time with us. I know it's very late in East Africa, even in West Africa, in Europe as well, even in the UK. But all of you spend time with us to discuss this very important topic, and I am very grateful that we found time to talk. Like we rightly said, this should not be the end of the conversation. In your own small way, I expect that you continue creating the awareness, because we will not stop talking about it, and we will also not stop acting. We will continue to engage. We will continue to unlearn the bad practices that has affected and created a lot of challenges for our society. But we also relearn positive behaviors to bring inspiration to those we love most, so we can develop and build a loving and a powerful society. I want to take this opportunity once again to thank my dear friend Kai for joining us. I don't know where you are in the world right now. The last time we met in Japan. So I don't know if you are in Japan or you're back in the States. But I also want to thank Dr. Nina Maya for spending some time with us as well as every single one of you for making this possible. Once again, I am so excited that we've come out with critical action plans, which I will share with you once this program is over. And then, God willing, next year will be 30 years of celebrating this event, and we will celebrate it in another way by talking more about some successes and wins as we continue to promote love and appreciation and gratitude for women and girls across the globe. Once again, I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all of you for coming. It's a pleasure being your host, and I believe we've had a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for coming, and God bless all of you. Enjoy the rest of the holidays. Bye-bye for now.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.